Welcome back to the Story Hive. Yes, it's the writing journey, the beginner's writing journey. Now, I'd like to examine the importance as a writer of apparent minor details. And I mean by red herrings and twists that you can throw in. And these are little clues, if you like, or pieces of small, later relevant information that you can add as you go, as you create the story. Now, in my case, they often occur as I'm writing. Sometimes when I pause and rest for a while, I think, oh, I'll go back a few pages and stick something in, because I just get a new idea. And I can dash back a page or 7 or 15 in a story, because that little key line that the reader will read, but they may not notice, but later it's going to come hugely important. And it's a great kind of revelation. Now, the reason I don't include this completely as regular editing, it's more of what I call reinsertion editing, creating the story as I go. See, writers, we whiz along with words and they fall from our fingers, and we're wrestling the words from the air onto the page. But every story, in my opinion, needs certain seemingly unimportant sentences which both add to the narrative then and later, but have that greater bearing on that story down the road. Sentences that may not occur to the reader, but they think about it later. Now, if we whiz back and forth, as I do, and pop them in, it's a wonderful feeling. So, again, I always like to explain it. Short story in the horror section of the Story Hive, The Vampire House. Now, the throwaway line is actually hidden right in the beginning, a kind of jokey thing with an uncle and his niece and his nephew. It's deliberately short, seemingly of no relevance or importance, but the end of the story, it gets you a real moment when you remember it. It's the same in detective stories. Have you ever noticed there's always an apparent small detail just thrown away by a detective or a woman right at the front, but then later at the end he suddenly references it and you go, oh yes, I remember that. It's so satisfying. Now, you feel fooled, but you're really happy about it. Now, the early reinsertion edit. Okay, this sounds a bit technical. Now, when you talk about, I don't know, reading similar works in other genres you've chosen and being very different, be very different. That's the big caveat. But it's not just the story I want you to read. Take a story you like, now deconstruct it. See how the writer created that narrative. Look at the sentences. That deconstruction is what I call it. See if you can see the technical construction that you obviously enjoyed in your favourite book. See why it works. Sounds a bit cold and clinical, but often it's those technical tricks, I call them, that create a long and powerful story. We become better writers by understanding structure, not the words or the narrative particularly, but the clever placement of each sentence, like bricks in a wall, where they drive the story along, hooking us in. And look for what I call those gear changes, just like in a car. Of course, the genre's narrative in this case isn't the actual key. It's just if you love one particular genre, it's important you really understand it technically. And it helps you avoid simply copying, as I keep saying, in style terms. Look, being original is very difficult. I mean, you're going to write and it'll be original. But in narrative and construction and sentence structure, that's where you've got to try and be a bit cleverer. Now, as I said, some genres, they just feel like a lot of the same. A lot of young adult fiction I examined, it just fell into this category for me. I'm convinced it's not exclusive to everything. But dream up something, oh, it sounds ridiculous, outside the box. So, I mean, best of luck. That specialist thing I sometimes remember is final editing. This isn't the end of the series, by the way. This is just about 3/4 of the way through. But let the story settle when you've finished it. Leave it. Because the final edit, well, it's being brave. Can chop lumps of your beautiful writing out. You're trying to evoke an imagination and an emotion at that end. So cut sentences in the middle of it that are just filler or unclear. Refine sentences to be short if necessary. Look for those details that drive the reader onwards. Get rid of the ones that don't. Don't lay it on too thick sometimes. Be subtle. Insinuate. Hint. Don't hit me over the head, but gently guide me to the emotion you're trying to evoke. To edit is to improve. Now that does mean going back to earlier pages, removing lines and phrases that you thought were lovely, that you thought would help. Because what we're trying to achieve, lean and mean, is completely possible. The final edit can be very satisfying, but eventually you've got to stop. Because you have to say, I'm done, that is it, it's the end. Now, today's example story is a true story from the Story Hive called The Tribe. Again, look for it in the Story Hive in the True Stories section. But my final edit, I had to fill you in on an amazing young woman and an extraordinary time in my life, a real story, which was rich and abundant in detail, but details I had to carefully pick, some over each other, and I lost a lot of them. They just weren't needed. Now the final version looks very difficult from the first finished version. It's a lot shorter. I lost unnecessary detail. I think I've kept the really good stuff and the surprise ending that I had in my head from the very start. It's a real story, it's a human story, dark and light, and true. But that final edit had to bring that out. So be bold and be brave. Well, that's always easy to say, but you're going to learn it as you go. So now, just a bit of a recap. Just a recap. A story is like a well-built building. It should be solid. There should be no cracks and faults, think editing. It shouldn't wobble when we push it. And it should keep the reader comfortable. And importantly, keep them inside on that reading journey. Now, I mean this as a reminder about your line lengths. Whatever you use, they should deliver information simply and cleanly, and sometimes quickly. Think about that synopsis. Be prepared to potentially change direction using a different ending. Remember we said that? Be guided by your imagination. Don't get too fixed. Don't forget the little map book. Remember, if you don't, it's going to get really complicated and you'll end up with a headache. Now, first read, killer lines, the opening line, that's got to grab me, drag me in. And think about the smooth, unbroken journey of lines as you put them down. Keep the narrative moving forwards. Pull the reader with you. Don't give them things that jar or make them stumble or make them do stuff that doesn't make any sense. I guess I'm saying keep the truth and the believability. Just keep it going. Don't insert things that are just like clearly just stuck in there. And of course, aim for the emotion you're aiming at from the outset. What emotion do you want to evoke? Write them down sometimes as a reminder if you want. I do. Now, finally, think of all the things we need to address within that final brave and bold edit. I believe the main aim of a writer is to entertain and stir the emotion, really. And I love a story to finish in some way, that's just me, but it's entirely up to you. There are no rules. This is writing. We write for joy, for amazement. I can't really put into words sometimes how I feel with a cup of tea, comfortable chair, remember that comfortable writing place, when I start my writing journey on a new idea that has really gripped me. And I want you to feel those emotions and that joy and that uplift. This is not a chore. This is not a drag. It's not, oh God. This is, I can't wait to get writing. Now, you've got a lot of information so far. I hope you've made notes. Remember, go back over the videos a few times. Take things out. But let's get writing, because I can tell you it will change your life. Happy writing.